Welcome to Lynn Cullen Live. Talk radio without the static. Email your questions and comments to lynncullenshow@gmail.com. And now your host, Lynn Cullen.
Hey there. How you doing? I'm hoping to be doing a little better than I was yesterday. It's May 26th, 2022, right? You know, that's one of the things where they ask you if you know what year it is. I sometimes alter, just like I did. What does that mean? I had friends over last night. We had a good time, which got interrupted every once in a while by protestations of how dare we. A good time. And it is, I think, important to steal what good times come our way. The pleasure of friends and any pleasure that can be had in this life. Even if there is such suffering. Because that is always there. Anyway, we got rid of our guilt pretty well and seized the moment. But that doesn't prevent me from beginning today with two obituaries. The first, perhaps you knew of this guy, but I did not, and what a delight to find out. It's just one aspect of his life. I don't know if in any other way, if he somebody I would have liked, but just this fact alone makes me like him. His name is Joe Pignatano. He was a Major League Baseball player, not that you ever heard of him. Maybe you did. I never did. He wasn't exactly a Hall of Famer. They called him Piggy. He played on a million teams, but it was his time with the Mets that I'm turning to. He was a sort of a lackluster catcher, a lackluster hitter. He was with I don't know. He was with the Dodgers, the A's, the Giants. He got around. And it was Gil Hodges who, when he was named the manager of the Mets in, I think, 1967, right, he took Piggy with him, not as a player, but as the bullpen coach. I'm not aware that I even knew there was a position, bullpen coach. I mean, the bullpen I always think of as this place where people sit around, watch the game. Every once in a while, you know, if whatever's going on demands it, they get up and throw the ball. But he was the bullpen coach, Piggy, for the Mets. In fact, he was a bullpen coach when they astonishingly won the pennant and the World Series. 69. And it was the next year, actually, that Piggy, sitting out there in the bullpen at work, thought that he had a lot of time on his hands because, as I said, this is a job. I mean, a job. His job was he'd play catch with the pitchers, and he would, if anyone asked him, he would say he thought this pitcher or that pitcher was the guy to call up. He had a telephone that he could talk to the manager. And Piggy's sitting out there, 1970, and He got an idea, and he acted on it. I mean, there was all that space, just generally just sitting there, a lot of sun, and he decided to plant a garden. Started with just a few tomato plants. They did really well, and so before it was all over, Piggy's garden had grown quite large, taking up quite a bit of the bullpen at Shea Stadium. If they were on the road, apparently other people would take care of it for him, make sure the plants got watered. They also filch the harvest. But this is why I just wanted to share his obit with you, because his baseball career alone would never have warranted a New York Times obit. And in fact, the picture that accompanies the obit is of him in full Mets uniform, tending a tomato plant during a game. He also, by the way, I mean, his garden included pumpkins, cucumbers, eggplants, squash, zucchini, radishes, lettuce. Joe Pignatano was Piggy. Died at the age of 92. And then there was an obit that I saw in the local paper. And I guess I was surprised because I thought this woman was already dead, I'm sorry to say. And I was happy to see that she had lived a very long life. She died at the age of 99. I met her only in passing, but I bought something from her, something that I cherished, and something that I gave away this year and have regretted it. So seeing her obituary just washed me in a whole bunch of emotion, strangely. Her name was Margo Lovelace. And I knew her only because I walked by her shop. It wasn't really a shop, it was a theater, a puppet theater on Ellsworth Avenue, Shadyside. And this would have been shortly after I came to town. So I didn't know much about her, but it was clear this was somebody who was really into puppets. And it turns out, in fact, that her puppet theater was like one of the first, I think was the first permanent puppet theater in the United States. And she had started it in the 60s. So it had been there for like 20 years before I showed up. And at one point, I, walking by, happened to see that she was closing up. And she had a lot of the puppets that would hang there. You know, these were big puppets that would hang there in storage. And some were for sale. And I ran in because one of the ones hanging there was Winnie the Pooh. And Winnie the Pooh looms large for me because it was my mother's favorite book to read to us. So my memories of my childhood is of my mom reading Winnie the Pooh and cracking up. She was always just, she couldn't get two sentences out of her mouth. She would just be laughing in delight. And often she was enjoying it more than I think I was. But Margo Lovelace's Winnie the Pooh was just big. I mean, he was big. And he was just perfect. He was a perfect Pooh. And the way you dealt with him is you had to put your whole arm up his behind. And then you would find this thing that allowed you to manipulate his head. And then his two arms had poles coming out of them so that you could then manipulate. He was the most amazing thing. Contraption and again, as I say, imbued with so much. I couldn't believe that she sold it to me. I can't remember what I paid. I don't think it was much. But almost 20 years after that, when I adopted my son, I finally had someone to, to play with my Winnie the Pooh with. And so there's memories like that. And I never got very good at manipulating the puppet. But my sense of Margo Lovelace was just of somebody whose work, because she handmade all of her puppets, whose work I owned, possessed, and cared about. And everywhere, that puppet was always sitting in some room in my house. Always hard to miss. So, you'd always see him. And now he's been gone because I gave him away in the family because we're having little babies born, another generation. I'm regretting it. And I'm thinking I got to get it back. You ever done that? Given a gift and then realized, oh my God, what have I done? When you feel like you've ripped part of yourself out. But anyway, that's a question for another day. Like I should write an advice columnist. Can I ask for the puppet? I think I actually can get that puppet. If it's not in London. If they didn't take it, and because it's so big, I doubt that they did. So I think it's gettable. Winnie, I'm coming for you. But Margo Lovelace. So it turns out her obit lets me know things that make her more astonishing. She was this self-taught, amazing figure internationally in the world of puppetry. And that this amazing thing, this place she created, sitting there on Ellsworth Avenue up until 1983, I guess. But in the obit, the person that is quoted most is never properly identified by the writer. He's identified. It says, went on to become a theater director in Los Angeles. And then later said is a teacher at the University of California or something. And I kept thinking, Peter Sellers? Why, he's more than that. I mean, I wouldn't just call him a Pittsburgh native who went on to become a theater director in Los Angeles, because Peter Sellers is somebody whose name I've read all my life. He is huge. Anytime you hear of some theatrical production or an operatic production anywhere in the world that has blown the socks off critics or sent them howling, it's Peter Sellers who did it. And that's not made clear. So Margo Lovelace and her puppets sitting there on Ellsworth, it turns out she's the one who launched Peter Sellers. He was 10 years old, and he knocked on that same door on Ellsworth And he said, my friend's moving to Alabama, and he says he works as an apprentice here. Could I take his place? And in he went. And in the obituary, he makes clear that she changed his life, that sent him off on this trajectory to be one of the greatest influencers in the theatrical world. I'll just read you one where he said when he went to work. And I'm remembering some of this too. She had a garage, Sellers tells the Post-Gazette. She had a garage painted fuchsia with a wall of theater masks from around the world. I knew wait. I had no idea what I was in for when I knocked on that door. This woman proceeded to change my life. She was pushing forward he stayed with her all through his childhood. She was pushing forward into the new and the avant-garde. And every year she did a puppet production for adults using texts from the period of great French surrealists. This is a kid who was doing this with this woman on Ellsworth. The first literature I read, he said, was French surrealism. All of those things that I learned, I use all the time, every day. I ended up working in Paris, still do on occasion. I went to Moscow when I was 18 because of her, because of the stories she told. And that changed my life. I'm still involved in all kinds of Russian theater, and that's all due to Margo. That all came from Ellsworth Avenue in the late 60s and early 70s. Well, this whole thing blew me away. I mean, just one obit, and I feel now like I'm connected through my Pooh, my Winnie the Pooh. I always knew this was special, and now seeing, I had no idea of the impact of this woman. Anyway, I have a caller. Hello?
Hey, it's Jonathan.
Oh, Jonathan, hi.
Hi. So I grew up in Shadyside on Walnut Street in the 60s,
wow.
Which was a wild place to grow up, by the way.
Yeah.
Hippies camping on our lawn and
yeah.
fishing on Walnut Street. But anyway, going to the Lovelace Marionette Theater was one of my favorite memories as a child. We would go there for birthday parties and things like that because I went to Liberty School, which was then K through 8 public school, and right. So Ellsworth Street,
just a few
right
blocks
there.
away. Yeah, right.
Yeah,
right.
Yeah. And we'd go in the theater, and the lights would dim, and it was just magic. I'm getting goosebumps just talking about it. But she created this world that was just magical, and of course, you weren't looking at puppets. She really made them come to life. Right. And I was trying to look online. I'm sure she was on with Mr. Rogers because of his interest in puppets, but so far I haven't been able to find it online. But she was amazing, and I had your reaction when you talked about the obit. I thought, wait, she was still alive. But like you, I'm glad she was. Now, here's what you have to do. I once gave away a lamp of my mom's to a cousin. And a few weeks later, I was just filled with regret. And I sucked it up and I said, listen, this is really embarrassing. But I didn't realize how much that meant to me when I gave it to you. And I've just been kind of, suffering about it. I I know this is rude, but blah, 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 blah. Anyway, they were so happy to give it back to me because they could tell how much it meant to me.
Yeah. And I think
so. Give me your family member's number. I'll call them. I'm good at guilt.
Well, it was last I saw Winnie the Pooh. He was at my brother's house in Ann Arbor, and and it was my brother's grandchild who lives in London who was visiting that I had brought it to. But the reaction, it wasn't quite a good, and I was immediately sort of disappointed that Pooh was not getting the reception I thought he deserved. And my guess is that, when they flew back to London, that would have been too big a thing. So my guess is they would have left it at my brother's house, which means I'm just taped. I am. Next time I go, I'm going to tell them the truth. That
Wait, how long ago was this?
It was this year.
You have to jump on this. You don't want it to be given away. This big thing. You don't want them to say, "Oh, this is nice of Lynn, but I really don't want this," and then they give it to somebody else. You have to jump.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
No, he belongs with me. I mean, I was thinking I'm not going to have grandchildren, so I should let my siblings who have grandchildren have the joy of this. But no, I wasn't realizing how much it meant to me. It's so
you can leave it to them when you shuffle off this mortal coil. But in the meantime, it can be with you. Yeah. So they'll know they'll get it eventually in 50 years from now. But in the meantime, right. Now I have something. I'm going downwards. Winnie the Pooh is trending on Twitter today. Unfortunately,
oh no,
he's in the public domain now, and some company is making a Winnie the Pooh horror movie. Unfortunately, I hope it bombs. And I hope it's terrible, but so I just wanted to let you know. But you get your Pooh back. No,
I will. I'm going to get my Pooh back.
I'll send you the link so you can see.
Speaking of Winnie the Pooh movies, I know my mom was just beside herself when the animated Winnie the Pooh stuff came out. I don't know, is that Disney that did it? Whatever.
Yeah.
She was appalled because it wasn't the voice. It wasn't what was in her head. She so was immersed and so loved that world of that Milne created, and having somebody else's vision put on the screen was just too much for her. So I mean, I know Winnie the Pooh just looms large in my family.
Yeah, well, you got to get it back.
Get him.
See, it's funny. My experience was the opposite because my Pooh was the animated Pooh at first. So Sterling Holloway's voice. I'm almost sure he did the voice. He did the voice of Pooh. So that is Pooh's voice to me.
Okay,
so that's fun. All right. Hey, wonderful reminiscing with you about Margo Lovelace.
Yes,
keep us updated on the tale of Pooh. The return of Pooh.
The return of Pooh. I will. Thank you,
right.
Jonathan.
Okay.
I love you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Bye. Oh, gosh. All right. Now, how are we going to get into the horrors from all of that? Well, who said we had to? Well, I don't know. Okay, let me just get myself together a little bit. Here's something that's not quite a horror that I want to share with you, but it means it will probably end on horror. Hell. It has to do with John Fetterman. Spoke about him a little bit yesterday and about his the mystery of his heart. Well, Fetterman is in the New York Times today, another big story. They can't, the media will not be able to quit him. This is why my sense was that this is the winning candidate. Because like the media was drawn to Trump, media is drawn to the unusual, to people who draw crowds. And they then help those people who have already a natural ability. And it just starts to snowball. So the fact that John Fetterman was already rather well known outside of Pennsylvania by virtue of, again, media being drawn to this enormous, strange guy who happened to be the lieutenant governor of Pennsylvania. And so he's a regular on the talk show circuit. Colbert loves him. Yeah, he's just, yeah. So there he is today, another big, huge article, page 2 of the style section. Now, I have talked before about my inability to understand why people get so praised about style, how I think of it as something so frivolous. Clothes and runways and this is the new thing, this is the new color, this is what the whole thing annoys the hell out of me. But here's John Fetterman taking up a big hunk of the style section. And why? Well, because he has styled himself to look unlike any other politician, which has given him a style that is unique and then creates the brand that draws the attention of media. And it starts to snowball. And so the fact that it's John Fetterman in the style section, yeah, because people who write about style understand what it is he's done. And it's quite clear that they think he knows damn well what he's done. I'll read a little of that. Combined with his shaved head, goatee, and tattoos, his left arm, the zip code for Braddock, Pennsylvania, the town where he was mayor for 15 years. On his right arm, the dates when citizens of Braddock were killed by gun violence during his term. The overall effect practically reeks of the word so beloved of the political class and so rarely associated with it: authenticity. Now, this is fascinating because he appears to be authentic, but in reality, and who knows, it could be a very thought out, crafted authenticity, the way he has chosen to present himself as everyman, as the anti-politician. And he's smart enough to know how powerful that is. In the style section, they point out that the electorate, and I'm not going to argue with this, may not have the time or the inclination to read a lot of policy proposals or platforms or listen to stump speeches but they know a kindred soul when they see one. You see, this is why, again, I think he's the better candidate, because we are all about style and we are not about substance in this country and in this culture. And so they point out that he plays it too. He once wrote this: I even lack the political, metaphorical sleeves to roll up. All I ever wear are short sleeve work shirts because hard work is the only way to build our communities back up. Now there just shows how self-aware and self-conscious he is of the theater of politics, the metaphorical theater as well of politics. As the writer says, that his writing that was an observation that in and of itself revealed how closely attuned he was to the traditional theater and costume of politics, in case anyone was wondering if all this happened by coincidence. And so, person writing this, who is the person writing this? Vanessa Friedman. And she goes on to say, the fact that he presents himself as he does makes him immediately identifiable, immediately memorable, and in a world of white noise and short attention spans, that's an advantage. Yeah. So that has been and was my calculation about why he's the right candidate for the Democrats. And it's not based on anything having to do with the politics or of what he stands for, whether he'll be a good senator or any of that. It has to do with the fact that we are a country and a political culture that's all about style and not about substance. If he manages to bring some substance with him, fine, he's capable of it, but I don't know. So I thought this was a brilliant piece. And they did, Vanessa Friedman did point out, notice how I use they, did point out that if he is successful, I mean, you got to figure this even now, that he'll be copied. God help us. And you'll see a lot of other pals getting out of their suits in the race. Be authentic. Now, what we got here? Okay, Jonathan has sent me Blood and Honey is a nightmare reimagining of the beloved bear. Oh, for God's sake. Lynn Henry writes, these words have gone viral since Tuesday. I don't know the source, but I agree. Here are the words. How about we treat every young man who wants to buy a gun like every woman who wants to get an abortion? Oh my God. Yes. I'll continue. Mandatory 48-hour waiting period. Parental permission. A note from his doctor proving he understands what he's about to do, and a video he has to watch about the effects of gun violence. Oh, this is brilliant. And if we're going to really do this, use that as the template how we deal with a young woman trying to access abortion and a young man in this country trying to access lethal weaponry, then let's close down all but one gun shop in every state and make him travel hundreds of miles if he really wants that gun. And then, of course, have to go back again after the 48-hour waiting period. Make him take time off from work and stay overnight in a strange town and have to get a motel room. All just so he can get that gun. And before he gets it and walks into that one gun shop, make him walk through a gauntlet of people holding photos of loved ones who were shot to death. People who call him a murderer and beg him not to buy that gun. Wow. You bet that went viral. Pass it on. Pass that on. That is brilliant. Brilliant. Thank you. Henry, thank you. Barbara's telling me that a documentary about a short film done by Margo Lovelace called Museum Piece, or I don't know if she did it or it's about her, was nominated for an Academy Award in the short subject category. And she donated her collection of puppets and masks to the Children's Museum of Pittsburgh. Well, she obviously kept a few and sold some, because I got one. Yeah. Wow. Thank you for all of that. Bree writes, hi from Palawan. Where's that? I don't know where you are, Bree. I know you told me you're in Palawan, but I don't have a clue. Asia, right? I think. Huh? I have 2 stuffed animals like your Pooh. 2 mice. One a puppet named Socrates. And another stuffed animal named Topo Gigio. I know that from the Ed Sullivan Show, right? I have downsized so much, but I can't get rid of these 2 due to memories. I hope they're still at my mom's house in Pittsburgh. Oh, you call that downsizing, to leave stuff at your mom's house? Listen, I keep trying to... I've downsized a lot of my stuff, but there's all this stuff from my son that I'm afraid to touch. My mother had no such compunction. We would come home and then be looking for something that was special. It was gone. She threw everything out. Everything. It's a wonder that anything exists. So if your mom is anything like my mom, I wouldn't be so sure that Socrates and Topo Gigio are alive and well. Oh, gosh. I had said I wasn't going to talk about it, but Henry's piece pulled us in, and I just want to share a few things. Shortly after this shooting happened, I saw on my Twitter feed a tweet from a member of the United States House of Representatives, a man elected by we the people to represent them in Washington, D.C. A man, by all indications, extraordinarily vile. This is a guy whose own siblings desperately took out ads when he first ran, trying to warn people not to vote for him, that he was a horrible human being, a racist, a fascist, liar. I'm speaking of Paul Gosar, who, of course, was elected and reelected. And this is the tweet he put out. He's responding to somebody who obviously was saying, who could have done this early before we know it, much of anything. But Paul Gosar, Congressman Paul Gosar knows. And here's what he tweeted. We know already, fool. It's a transsexual leftist, illegal alien named Salvatore Ramos. It's apparently your kind of trash. The New York Times saw fit to have to take up 3 columns in its paper today to debunk everything that this lying SOB said. But it spread. It was already out there. It's probably where he picked it up because it was all the white nationalist message boards and sites. And that was that he was transgender. That was it. And all these pictures supposedly of him in women's clothing came out. Isn't this amazing? I mean, when these guys pick, when they cull our herd and they take out some of us and decide that this is the enemy. You know, when you become the enemy du jour, Black people, brown people, gay people, immigrants, Jews, transgender, you know, white men, not so much, although they feel very aggrieved, I know, and victimized. And there were claims out there that he did it because he was crazed, because he was on hormone therapy, because he was transgender. Mm-hmm. And then Gosar called him an illegal. Yeah. He's not transsexual. He was not transsexual. He was not illegal. He was born in effing North Dakota. If he was close to a border at birth, it wasn't the border that the white nationalists are worrying about all the time. This is a member of the U.S. Congress. And there's also people claiming, of course, that it was staged. It was a distraction so that a bunch of illegal transsexuals or something could scurry across the southern border there. Incredible. And, you know, who possibly could benefit from something as horrific as what happened? You know, there's someone who always benefits. Or this is good news. Massacres of children. It's the people who make and sell guns and ammo, because there's always a run for more. And the business section of the New York Times does point out that, yes, yesterday, wow, the share prices of gun and ammunition companies, whoo-hoo, yeah, they went up because people who like making lots of money but have no moral grounding at all are betting on fear and more death. Make some money. Brooke is saying, I did not watch Biden's speech. I didn't want to, about his reaction, but she's saying a lot of people, including a lot of Democrats, have been beating up on Biden's response. And she says, I agree. The one portion of his speech that was missing was, here's what we're going to do about it. And he didn't. You know, here's what's going to happen. Next to nothing. And that's the optimistic perspective. My guess. Next to nothing. We move on. We always do. The NRA will meet abashedly and unashamedly in Houston this very weekend. Yeah, no, we're just going to move on. And here's the reality. Biden knows nothing's going to happen and that he isn't going to be able to do much of anything. I believe it was in the Atlantic, Ronald Brownstein wrote that our political infrastructure, our corrupted, let me add an adjective, our corrupted political infrastructure will not let any meaningful legislative action happen. Yeah, you could do a little something here. Remember, we did at one point have a ban on assault rifles. Remember that? It lasted. When did that happen? Man, they got rid of that as soon as they could. As soon as the Republicans swept back into power. They got rid of that. Think of how many lives might have been spared if that had remained on the books. I just don't know what you do when you have 400 million guns already and people now scrambling to buy more because they're going to take our guns away. Yeah, how's that been going? You see all the guns that have been taken away? All they do is proliferate. And this is a classic case of not being able to put something back into the Pandora's box. And David Leonhardt this morning, has a few graphs that just, shows what an outlier this country is. They have a graph of the number of mass shootings in countries in the last 10 years, 20 years. Mass shootings. And it's a bar graph. And it's hard to tell it's a bar graph because it looks like there's only one bar, even though there's about 20 countries listed. Because all the other countries, you can't even see their little bars. But ours is this huge, long, the number, it says 101 mass shootings. Coming in second is France. 8. Third, Germany at 5. Because this is something that just doesn't happen anywhere but here. So it shouldn't be too hard to figure out what is different about us. Human beings are human beings all the world round. Americans in that respect aren't any different. What is different is that we have 400 million guns sitting around. And if guns are just available, people will, use them more often than in countries where they're not just lying around. There's another graph where you can tell they had to sort of all the other countries are like, you know, together in the bottom left corner. And then way up, way up with this huge blank in between. Way up in the upper right-hand corner is us. I don't even know what this one's about. What is it? Oh, gun ownership and homicide rates in developed countries. Yeah. Yeah. So there you have it. And we do not have the political will in this country to stop this. That's quite obvious. As I said yesterday, not until we vote these people out of office. Prevent any effort to save lives. You know, the fact that guns are lying around and so available, most of the gun deaths are not from mass shootings in this country. They're gun deaths that happen, you know, between usually just two people, but the gun's there. And so rather than, you know, we know this, the gun is there, and so bang. And the people who continue to believe, for whatever reason, that having a gun makes them safer are insane. You look at these numbers and you realize that more Americans are armed than any other place. So we got more good guys with guns than any other place. And how's that going for us? Ask. I saw that some kids had something out on Twitter saying they were going to walk out of their schools today, walk out Thursday. We refuse to go on like this. Did that happen anywhere? God help those kids. The fact is, you know, Susan was saying there should be a general strike about the abortion thing. There should be a general strike about this. Teachers should walk off. But nobody, as I said, we've lost the will. We don't act. We're like the Walking Dead. We're zombified. We've given up. We've acquiesced to essentially child sacrifice in this country. And as I said, you know, the odds are a kid you know is not going to get blown away sitting at their desk in elementary school. But as I said, they will live with the fear that they will. And they will live with drills of what to do when the guy comes for them. And here's something else that's not being said. It's men. Sorry, guys. Every one of these. What do they have in common? Okay? They're men. Rarely black men. Rarely. And who are Americans fearful of? Black guys. They're like scary. No. It's white guys. Mostly. But it's men. And I don't know what we do. I don't know what we do about the fact that men are so murderous, so seemingly unable to control themselves, so driven by emotion, but unable to express it in a reasonable way. It's something. Oh, I know. It's women's fault. It's mothers. Mothers raising sons all screwed up. That's probably it. It is. It'll come down that it is our fault in the end. Lou tells us that despicable woman on Fox News, Puro, I don't know how to pronounce it, was ranting about how you need to take your kids out of the public schools. Yeah, that's another thing on their agenda, to destroy public education. They've done a pretty good job of that. And put them in private schools where they'll be protected. Why do you think a private school is protected? There is no safe spot. None. Well, I'm just gonna throw in a few quick things here. Divest myself of scraps of paper that I have lying around. I once, has to be in the 80s, did a television piece making fun of media reporting on medical stuff and how we, the consumers, were constantly being whipsawed, saying, do this. And then 2 seconds later, no, don't do that. If you want to be healthy, do this. And then stories later about how don't do that. And unless you think I'm making it up, I actually once had USA Today, a headline that I had cut out that said something, I got it somewhere, that said fish oil will help your heart or something. And then maybe, I don't know, a year later, in the same font, the same size, there was a headline in USA Today that literally said the opposite. Fish oil can harm your heart or something. All right, whatever. And I said, this is insanity. Doctors will tell you that media reporting on health stuff is so fraught, is so filled with wrong information and simplified to the point of absurdity information. To beware, right? So I came on one of these headlines the other day. I think it was in the science section of the Times. And it says this: an aspirin a day may hurt your heart. How many of you have taken a baby aspirin once a day? I mean, that was we were told. And now they're saying exactly the opposite. Millions of Americans take a baby aspirin a day. Their doctors told them to do it. And now, guess what? Something called U.S. Preventive Services Task Force, influential panel of experts, has reviewed the growing evidence of aspirin use for preventing heart attacks and strokes, and they've issued a report and even a warning. Here's the warning that they issued after all these decades of people popping baby aspirin. It warned adults over 60 against starting an aspirin regimen for primary prevention. Dr. John Wong says it carries possible serious harms. notably an increased risk of internal bleeding. And those harms are higher than we thought in 2016 when we were all telling you to take them. Okay, so this is the thing. We only know as much as we know at the time. And we later find out that some things we thought we knew turn out to be incorrect. And this is always the case. So don't be always the one that jumps right on the bandwagon. I suspect. I don't know. Now, just so I'm not spreading any information incorrectly, it does say it shouldn't be used for primary prevention, which refers to patients, if you're somebody over 60 who has never had a heart attack or a stroke and does not have heart disease, you're the ones who aren't supposed to take it. There is no reason for you to take a baby aspirin. None. If, on the other hand, you have had a stroke or a heart attack, then as a secondary prevention, because you clearly face higher risk of subsequent difficulties, that aspirin could potentially remain part of your regimen. It says about a third of Americans over the age of 40 already take aspirin. Do you believe that? A third of them over 40 are taking them. And they say here, I'm just passing it on, it might be proved incorrect in a year or two, for adults ages 40 to 59, the net benefit of taking aspirin daily would be small, which is to say, probably don't bother. So what I'm getting from this is the latest wisdom on aspirin for prevention of stroke and heart attack is, if you're over 60 and you have had a cardiac event, a stroke or a heart attack, or open heart surgery or a stent and anything having to do with your heart, yeah, you could take a baby aspirin a day. Wouldn't be a bad idea. If you haven't had an event like that, don't do it. Oh my God. Okay, we're out of time. Geez, that took longer than I thought. I keep wanting to get to this thing about bodies turning up in Lake Mead, but I'm sure you already know that. It's just one of the sort of sidebars of the fact that there's not going to be any water in the southwestern United States soon. Is that, with lake levels going way, 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 way down, bodies that were thrown in there, never to be seen again, are now showing up. And it's amazing, apparently, and it's only going to get more amazing. All kinds of stuff showing up. So if you're trying to cover up a crime, don't throw the weapon or the body in a lake or a body of water where we have drought. Just say it. Want to be a smart criminal? Be a smart criminal. That's it for me. I'm done. Have a good Memorial Day. Ooh, we're taking the holiday off because it's the patriotic thing to do. That's right. And anyway, you gotta eat too much and generally have an unhealthy kind of a day. Okay? So I'll see you on Tuesday. Have a good weekend.
Lynn Cullen Live, Monday through Thursday from 10 a.m. to 11 a.m. and archived at pghcitypaper.com. The opinions expressed on Lynn Cullen Live are those of the host and do not necessarily reflect the viewpoints of Pittsburgh City Paper or its advertisers.